size has a quality of its own. And small navies, in particular navies in Europe, are challenged because they are not very large.
Hi, I'm still here with Jeremy Störs, who's the Deputy Director for the Austrian Center for Intelligence, Propaganda and Security Studies, also called ACIPS. And Jeremy is the author of a new report called How High? The Future of European Naval Power and the High-End Challenge, which was written in cooperation with the Center for Military Studies at the University of Copenhagen. And in this video, I would like to ask you, Jeremy, in your report, you have a typology of European navies, and I think typologies are always interesting because it can be so hard to do. But I think you have an interesting one. Could you just explain the typology that you work with in this report?
Yes, thanks for having me back. The typologies, and you mentioned it, are difficult to come up with, and you have to be very careful with typologies because usually typologies lead to ranking. So the higher up, usually the better you are as a navy, and I think that's something one has to be careful about. That not necessarily it is not a qualifying element if you're larger or small. It really depends on many different factors. And as I just said, now larger or small, so that is actually already the typology I use, namely assessing navies according to their size. Now that has many caveats that we won't discuss here, but we can definitely discuss at another point. What I do is I look at European navies and say they're large navies, the largest of the European navies that are quite balanced. The premier or the largest being the Royal Navy and the French Marine Nationale. So with nuclear forces, aircraft carriers, amphibious assault, so the quite balanced forces. Notwithstanding that in international comparison, they might still be relatively small. And I also include, for example, the Spanish and the Italian Navy in this because they are relatively well balanced. And then underneath that, I have medium-sized navies. Somewhat arbitrary, of course, but medium-sized navies are those that either lack certain elements of a balanced force. Say they don't have submarines, or they don't have large assault ships or carriers, or are relatively small or smaller than the ones mentioned before. And then underneath that, those medium navies, German Navy, for example, the Dutch Navy, underneath those navies are what I call small navies. And that is not a derogatory term, but just because they are smaller than the others. And that is often just inherent to them because the states are small and they have less means to invest in naval forces. And I divide those small navies again because, as we mentioned in the first video, even though small navies can be very different, and I provide in the report and the study, I provide actually a graph just looking at tonnage to give the readers an idea of how different those navies can be in terms just of size, not only number of ships, but in tonnage, the displacement of the entire navy. And small navies, so I divide them into two, one being high-performing small navies, and the other ones being the smallest of the navies in Europe. And the difference is the high-performing navies are those that are technologically quite advanced, or often very advanced, and they have to have difficult choices to make because they have limited budgets. But they are well trained, they operate well, and they're very good in those areas that they focus on. And the smallest of the navies, they are, of course, those that have the least means and therefore struggle the most to keep up with others to be able to conduct and be capable to conduct military operations across various warfare areas. So those would be the four categories I use.
Okay. And the Danish Navy? I'm Danish. I'm super interested here. Where would the Danish Navy fit in?
The Danish Navy, in my categories, it's a small navy. It has relatively few vessels, therefore quite large vessels, and it would be in the category of a small, high-performing navy. For the means that they are very sophisticated. They have good training internationally compared in an international context. They conduct operations both close to home as well as abroad. So that would be a small but high-performing navy.
We also talk about a rising size threshold necessary to sustain high-end operations. And I guess it sort of leads into the whole question of the challenges that really take up most of your report. But could you just briefly sort of explain what is this rising size threshold, and why do we have it?
Uh, so before we go into the different challenges we have, and the title already indicates it, how high, question mark, it's the question, how high is the bar that other navies and the international strategic environment sets for naval forces in Europe? How high is that, and what does it need to reach that bar, that level, to be able to conduct and conduct warfare operations or war fighting if need be, or deter conflict? And the size thresholds, I have two thresholds. One is capability threshold that is rising because internationally large navies are investing into high-end capabilities. As we mentioned the first we did, so they're increasing their capability in the high-end area. So other navies have to be able to catch up to that or stay close to that to be able to effectively conduct military operations at sea and from the sea. And the other one is the size threshold. This is also rising. So size has a quality of its own. And small navies, in particular navies in Europe, are challenged because they are not very large. Most of them are not very large. They don't have, they lack a critical mass. They have a couple of vessels that they can deploy, but not all too many. And if they lose ships, they don't have anything left. If a ship is taken out of action. So the size need and the bar for size is also rising, and how can European navies, or navies in Europe, I should say, catch up? That's what I mean by the size threshold rising.